we go way back, and I'll get to that in a second. But first, I want to say teachers are superheroes. Outside of students, guardians, y'all collectively have the biggest impact on students' lives, and in my opinion, on the lives that truly affects how they will become adults. I don't know what I'm saying, but basically, y'all are great. Your work doesn't end when y'all clock out. Y'all kind of get the shit end of a stick a lot of the time, and I just want to thank you guys, you specifically, for all the work that you do for students, especially working with second graders during COVID. Because I don't know how you. I
uh,
just say thank you for all of your work as a teacher and just going above and beyond, especially teaching during COVID. Um, and so, Danielle, we go back to Flamin' Hot Cheetos, Cheez-Its, and Hey Ya by Outkast. We grew up down the street from each other in Illinois. We went to, I don't know if we went to middle school together, but we definitely went to junior high and high school together.
yep.
You moved
Yeah.
in sixth grade or seventh grade?
Seventh grade, but like over half of our lives. It's so crazy.
Which is crazy because we were in different schools when you moved here, but somehow we hung out all the time. Um,
Yeah, and then you moved up to junior high and yeah, good times. And then also like as adults, just we were both living in Spain at the same time.
oh snap! I forgot about that.
Yeah,
So
so
summer,
lots of good memories, Shane.
I don't know if I should say this on. I'm gonna say Danielle got me drunk for the first time ever in my life in Barcelona.
That did not happen.
We went to the Calvin Harris concert. That was like my first concert in person. Wow, Danielle, we really have memories. I forgot all about Barcelona. So summer
How did you forget all about that? That was such like, I mean, like living in Spain was just like so amazing. I'm so glad that we were like able to meet up. But yeah, that was a great weekend. But so many good memories, like dancing to Outcasts, like
yes.
but like truly, like I think this is awesome that you are putting this together, because I think if there is some like not just one thing, but one thing related to education is just how underappreciated teachers are. Um, and I think like this pandemic has really like shed light onto that. So
Yes.
thank you for like putting this together.
No problem. I just
Um,
like to underscore what you just said, to go from, because like I felt like in March, April, May, y'all were like the heroes, like, oh my God, teachers are going above and beyond. And it was like, all right, get back in the school. And it's like, yo, they're people too. And I don't know about y'all's kids and what y'all been doing all summer. And so like I was like, it's just crazy to me. It's like we went from heads to tails over the summer, just like y'all need to be back in school. Like, can they like get a chance to like, are the school districts doing what needs to be done to get them back in the schools? Are you doing what you're supposed to be doing to get? Did you go on vacation this summer when you should have sat at home? Like it was, it
yeah.
didn't make sense to me at all. So
It was definitely like a light switch. And, it really was like, oh my gosh, like, teachers are on this pedestal. And then all of a sudden, it's like, you guys need to get back in the classroom. And then like we started being referred to as like lazy and didn't want to work. And that wasn't the case at all. I don't think anyone that chooses education for a profession was like, no, I just don't want to get back into education, because if that's the case, you shouldn't even be in it. So it was really crazy to kind of see like this like roller coaster of emotions towards educators. So
yes, and so I'm gonna hop in real quick. How are you? I feel like we jumped in and got real quick. But like, how are you doing?
good. I mean, this year is different. So not back in St. Louis. We are in Denver, just to play it safe with all of our family. But yeah, just doing good. Turned 30 next week. So yeah, getting up there.
So you guys moved to Denver at the beginning of this school year. You guys were there already before.
This is my third year teaching in Denver.
Okay, that's what I thought. So let's go back to, well, actually, let's start from the beginning. What made you become a teacher? Like, where did this start from? When did you get this idea? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah, so I actually come from like a long line of educators in my family. And so like ever since I was a little girl, You know, like when they have you write, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, you know, mine was always about being a teacher. Like, you know, there was nothing else in my mind that I wanted to do. Actually, that's a lie. I did want to be a movie star. So
I can see
I
that.
went the teacher route. There's still hopes for the movie star. But yeah, so it's just like been a part of who I am. So I had no other like thoughts, like teaching was it. So
And it was always elementary school, or that just came later?
yeah, always elementary school. Yeah, I've really like working with younger kids. So I've taught fourth grade, but majority of my teaching experience has been in second grade.
And how long have you been a teacher?
This is my 7th year.
Wow, we're old. We are
I
getting.
know, right? It's so crazy.
It's like one of us has been doing the same thing for 7 years. I can't say I have because you know me, but wow. Okay. So let's go back to August. August comes, like school year starting. It's a whole new group of students, a whole new group of families. What is your mindset? Like, how are you preparing? What are your next steps? Like, what happens in August?
Yeah, so I mean that's a great question because I was like really nervous because if you like with teaching, the beginning of the school year is so crucial with building those relationships with families and with students. And so I was like, how is this going to work? Like over technology, you know? And it seemed like when I reflect back on August, it seems like such this like far-fetched thing that like I have to accomplish, but it has it's worked. And you know, I like have great relationships with my kids and my families. And I'm sad because like my group of kids this year, they're awesome, but I'm like really sad that I don't get all of them in person because they are like probably one of my favorite group of kids that I've had. So
I won't tell your other group of students that you said that.
no,
But
every group, like you love every group, but like this group, it's a big group of kids. There are 28 of them. And like all of their personalities are just so awesome.
I'm just imagining 28 little boxes on a screen and having to watch all of them while trying to teach a class. That's got to be crazy. Uh,
Yeah, had
how?
to download some extensions. Had the
What
Google
extension?
extension so I can see more.
Got. Oh yeah, that's right. So you have to build relationships with students and families. How did you do that over technology?
So I'm pretty lucky in the sense that my school, it's a smaller school. And so I would say about a third of my class, I've had their siblings and like I know the family. So that was really great. But I think just like using technology, right? So the parents are constantly calling me or texting me, or when we were in person for a little bit of time, like I'll see them at pick up and drop off. So I think just like communicating, you know, is always key to every relationship. So I think that really came into play with building those relationships in a virtual setting.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking because I've been in like big cities in the past 5 years, I guess, but like we grew up in a smaller-ish town, so like everybody knew not everybody, but like teachers going into high school knew who my brother was because my brother was there before me. Like they probably knew your sister. Your sister went to high school like at least a few years.
Yeah.
So I guess that does definitely help. But how do you lost my train of thought? Um, Dog, you said something I was gonna latch on to. We'll come back to it. So in this space, you know, you had a lot of students before, but those students that you didn't have before, how is the parental support with those parents, seeing that you're teaching second grade, so the parents kind of have to be involved for the students to get their education?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially at the beginning of the school year, like so we switched from the spring to the fall, is like in the fall, we started doing this live teaching. So I am online all day going through like, you know, all the different subjects. So at the beginning of the school year, you know, I kind of just was very like upfront with the parents of like, hey, I just am going to need you to get them like started with this, but they will become independent. So they just kind of help them learn the ropes. But now like my kids are able to do everything kind of like independently. Like kids are so tech savvy. So once they're at a certain age, they like eventually like will catch on, you know? So I think that we have like a good system now. So I like really was trying to tell the parents that I don't want this to feel like another full-time job, because a lot of them are at home working. Like I can hear them on calls and you know, doing there's a lot of them are in school too. And so I can like see them in their class. And so I think now that we have like a system worked out, things are going smoothly.
Nice. I just remember what I was going to ask you. You said you guys were in person for a little bit. Was that this semester you guys were in person for a little bit? So what happened in
Yeah.
that situation?
Yeah, so we were in person for probably like less than 2 months. We we had to go back remotely for those 3 weeks between Thanksgiving and winter break. So um, we went back early October 5th. I believe was when second graders came back. So in elementary schools, they did it like a gradual release. And so they started with the youngest learners, and then each week they would bring back a different grade level. And then we were all back in the building. So
Wow. So how was being in the building for a little bit of time with your students? Was you I'll start with the first part. Were you nervous? COVID, you're in a building, closed rooms. How was that aspect of it?
it was kind of like a shock at the beginning, because they were like, yeah, we have all these resources, we have masks, we have these cleaning supplies, and we got these dividers. Or they said that they were going to give individual desks. Well, they did not do that. The kids were at tables where two students were supposed to be at a table together. And then apparently there were going to be these dividers. The dividers they gave us were like this piece of plastic that was not like dividing anything. Like you could literally sit back and like you're just breathing all over the person next to you. But the kids, you know, they were wearing their masks. They were great with the mask. I know there were a lot of people that were super nervous about like younger kids wearing the mask. So they did an awesome job with that. So I think like everything throughout this pandemic, at first it feels very nerve-wracking, but then like adjusting to it. To answer the part about how did it feel like being with students, it was really great to have kids in person. I think like the biggest issue was that I'm teaching these kids in person, and then I'm also teaching the kids at home. And so if something goes wrong with a kid in person's computer, then I'm having to leave the other half of the class that is online. And in second grade, you can't just like leave and then they'll just like sit there and just like, you know, patiently wait. Like they're going to start in the chat box or talking out loud or like bringing their pet to show, you know. So it does get really like tricky with juggling all of those.
So
Like,
you had a hybrid system. Was that like the whole time question, was it because parents got to decide if their kids were coming back and that's why it was hybrid, or that's like how did that work?
yeah, it was parent choice. So my class was basically split like half of them were gonna be virtual for the whole year and the other half would be in person. And so it kind of just became this thing where we only have so many teachers at our school. So the classroom teachers were basically left with having to do both of them, because we don't have enough to say, okay, you take the in-person kids and I'll take the online kids. So that's kind of how that decision came into play.
And how did you lesson plan so everybody's working on a computer, no matter,
Yep.
even if you're at school. So does that make the lesson planning easy, so you're not creating a whole separate lesson for hybrid kid or at home kids and in-person kids?
Yeah, it does make it easier, because it's like, okay, I know that everything just needs to be like digital. But I think like adding in that piece of like, okay, so now I'm having to make all of these things that I didn't have before for online and the assignments. But I also feel really bad for the kids in person. because they are just like sitting in the classroom looking at the screen, but then I'm sitting right in front of them. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so I like really, really want to just be able to go back to sitting at a round table and like teaching kids in a small group, like how to read or how to improve their reading. Um, and so like, it feels like there's just like this computer or device like between us. So that was definitely like a negative to the hybrid model that we're following.
Okay, I want to know if you can do this. Can you take me through? I'm a second grader, and you're teaching me how to read. What are you doing via, like, how do you do that over the internet?
So, so over the internet is that we would have a reading that's on your level, and you would be in a group with um, 3 to 5 other students, depending on like your group size, right? So however many kids are in the class that are also on that level. So I would assign them the reading on this platform, and then the kids know how to share their screens. So then they share their screens with me, and we're all looking at the same stuff. And then we're just like going through and reading. And then based off of the needs of the student, that's where I'm like, directing my instructions. So it might be that this group is struggling with short and long vowels. So that's kind of like what we're focusing on in the group. So that's kind of like what it looks like.
And so do you split, so like you have 28 students, do you split like, all right, they're gonna be on mute for now, or like, do you split them up by time frame during the day? Like, how does that work?
No, that's where it gets complicated because then you have to have like a very organized system of like, okay, this group for the first half, you're going to be on this program where it's like a reading program we use for the school. Or actually the first half, you're going to be with me and then you'll go to the reading program, or you're going to have like independent work. Or I even have 2 groups of students where they go to the reading intervention. So you just have to be like really clear with your set schedule and like kids knowing where to go.
I don't know if you can tell, I'm blinking really hard because I'm just like, I just don't, like, y'all are running like shifts at a store. Like the fact that you have to, and they're second graders, and you're telling me that their parents are off, so they're like doing this on their own. So you're like, hey, little Timmy and little Jimmy and Christina and Sabrina, you guys are going to be over here doing this. Please mute yourselves for the next 20 minutes and work together, or somehow work together, but don't talk. But
So they don't actually, so when they're working like in a small group, they're with an adult. But where it gets tricky is telling a second grader, okay, this is your 20-minute block of independent work, and getting them to go and do their independent work instead of going to play like Fortnite, right? Because you're at home, you have all of your stuff. So that's where like the communication piece comes back with families, is making sure that they know, hey, I know that at like 1 o'clock, you're not supposed to be playing Fortnite because I know your schedule. So what are you supposed to be doing? So I think that that's definitely just those strong relationships with families come into play.
wow. So that brings us to a question of, do you have any students of parents who are essential workers who have to be outside of the home, and how has that been working with those families to make sure those students are on task?
Yeah, so I mean, it takes a village, and so a lot of the my students that parents are working, they will go to grandma or aunts or something like that, and have someone there to kind of supervise. I think where things get really tricky is where they don't have an aunt or an uncle or somewhere to go to, and they're with their older siblings that are, juniors, seniors in high school. And then all of the kids are supposed to be on task and at home, and, making sure that they're logging on and doing what they're supposed to. And that is where like a lot of lack of engagement is happening, right? Because how are you going to tell a 17-year-old to like come and be on the computer and doing their schoolwork instead of like on the phone with their friends or playing video games?
Right, or doing their own, or maybe doing their own schoolwork, possibly. If that's
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, totally. And then also keeping your younger siblings on task too.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, it gets really interesting depending on the family's situation.
Wow. And still on the family of, I know there are a lot of situations where families may have lost their jobs or lost work. Have you guys had any situations with that? And is there some kind of relief that's been set up for those families if that's a situation in your district?
Yeah, we have a lot of great resources for families where, we have put families in like hotels and getting them groceries and like assistance. We even have assistance programs where they will pay like a bill and help out in that sense to families. So we have a great like community resource bank. I know that with my class that I've had families where um, the parent felt that it was in the best decision of the family for one of the parents to stay at home with the kids and the other parent would work. So I know that that's kind of situation. I have another family where the parent was let go because, that department still isn't open. Um, so, but it like worked out where that didn't greatly impact the family. But I think like, everyone's situation is just like so different.
Yeah. I was literally just watching the news, and I never watched news. They were talking about it this morning, and a parent said the exact same thing. Like, I decided it made more sense for me to stay at home than to pay somebody to come watch my kid when I could just be at home watching my kid and helping them learn. And that didn't even cross
Right.
my mind. Something like when I was in second grade, my brother was in sixth grade, I think, probably something like that. And I imagine both my parents would have had to go to work. So just imagine me trying to listen to my brother telling me what to do would have never worked. And I'm pretty sure we only had, this is obviously years ago, we only had one computer. So who's getting access to this computer? Technology was way different back then. So imagine upgrade to now, things would be different. But yeah, I just can imagine like that whole being a kid right now and having to learn and pay attention on a computer, because like right now I can look around and see all these different things and Miss Hernandez, I'm not whatever. What else am I doing today? So yeah.
Can you imagine if we were like in high school when this happened? Like I think about that all the time. Like if I was the student and this is like my reality, I don't know.
I mean, if we were in high school right now, that's like right now is basketball happening because that's probably where my mind would be at. Two, I was a great student because I was smart enough to understand things, but like I could talk to a wall. Like you could move me around in the classroom, I would still talk to everybody. So like I would probably be having withdrawals when not being able to talk to anybody. I'd probably be the kid on Zoom meetings, like putting random backgrounds up as I do at work now, or doing whatever to like reenact the classroom setting. But I couldn't imagine having to be on a computer all day in school as a high schooler. I mean, I didn't have texting in high school, but like now having texting, there's no way you could get me to pay attention for 8 hours while sitting at home. Like that's unthought of for me because
I know. Right. And then being told that you can't like see your friends. I don't know. We would have been outside like
I mean, think
in
about
the
all the times
streets.
we had random bomb threats at school. And they're like, oh, you don't have to come to school today. Like, okay, that means I'm going to hang out with my friends. Like, I never forget my dad was like, why are you not? I was like, because we don't have to go to school today. And you told me that school said we don't have to be at school. So why would I sit at home and waste a free day? Like, when I have with my friends. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't, that's crazy. We'll check my questions real quick, just make sure I'm not missing anything. So what?
Matt's gonna come join us.
Okay, Matt, you got to sign a release form before I can do anything with this, but welcome, Matt.
Wait, does he have to sign the form now or can he do it afterwards?
You can do it after.
Oh, okay.
Hey Shane, how's it going?
Good. How's it going? You look
Good.
like
Good to see you.
that's my
Yeah, I really went for it.
He's going for the Shane look.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Danielle had me, we sat down for like 3 hours. It took her like 3 hours to do this, which is way too long to shave a head. So.
Yeah, it only takes like 15
I didn't want it to look bad. I was like really concentrating on it.
Okay.
And also he doesn't have great quality clippers.
Okay.
I heard you guys talking about high schoolers, yeah?
All kinds of kids. So Matt, you work in a high school. How's working in, yeah, we were talking about high school. We were talking about how we would have not been the greatest students if we had to do this while in high school. So how's working in high school going for you virtually?
It's pretty tough, I think, across the board with high schoolers. It's been a little bit of a different ball game. You know, for a lot of high schoolers, they don't have necessarily a parent that's sitting down with them, getting them logged in and making sure that they're on it. So it's really up to a lot of student motivation and requires a lot more engagement than being in a traditional school setting. So it's been pretty tough trying to get students engaged in a virtual setting. So, you know, it's a challenge. We're figuring out ways that we can continue to essentially adapt and improvise as we go along. But it's been tough as it has for every grade level, but high school presents a lot of different challenges.
So I realized I didn't say, Matt, thank you for your service as a teacher as well, because as I told Danielle, I think teachers are superheroes. The work you guys do is just crazy amazing to me, and to be doing it during a pandemic is also crazy ridiculous. So I want to say thank you to you as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
But what subject do you teach in high school? So like you're everything, and you're like,
I'm actually a special education teacher. So the way our school works is we use a full inclusion model, which means that we don't have any standalone classes for special education students. It's all integrated in the general education setting. So I co-teach in English, social studies, and I actually co-teach a marine biology class as well. But I'm kind of all over the place with the subject area. But really the focus of my job is much more on the special education side of things and the compliance side of things.
Got you. So we talk about Danielle has to like look at 28 boxes on her screen and like you four go do this while you four do this. How many students are you working with, and how do you manage a virtual classroom?
It really varies. Sometimes I'm in the classroom with the whole class of 20 kids. Sometimes I pull into breakout rooms of 1 to 3 students. So it really varies based on what we're doing and where that support is needed. But I would say a lot of the time I'm in smaller settings, usually through a Zoom breakout room. So yeah, Zoom is the platform that we're using, which you guys are using Zoom here too. And we've been really relying on breakout rooms and smaller to get that kind of smaller group and individualized contact with students. Even though it's still pretty tough. I mean, a lot of students will just keep their camera off. You don't really know what's going on there. You don't know if they're following along, if they're even in front of the computer. So it has been really tough. So I utilize giving students the option to respond through the text box as well, as much as I hate it. But just any way that we can get that contact and that communication with students goes a long way these days.
Gotcha. Yeah. Think about that, Danielle. If we had the opportunity to turn cameras off in high school, like, I'm gonna be over here.
Right.
But it is so hard, like for him, like that I see the major difference of my second grade classroom to working with high schoolers is he's like, none of the kids have on their cameras. And so he's like trying to get kids to engage, and it's just like crickets. And so I feel so bad because I'm kind of like getting kids like, all right, one person at a time, they all want to talk. And so it's opposite from the elementary to the high school level.
I've definitely had I've had kind of the pleasure of seeing her teach, which is, I've seen her teach before, but in a different setting. And it's really cool to hear her students just fully engaged and having these full conversations. And it's definitely a stark contrast from what I'm seeing, where I'm getting one-word responses, or, you know, 2 kids out of a class of 20 turning on their cameras to even acknowledge the fact that, hey, I'm here, I'm in class, I'm ready to go. And it does make a big difference in my mind to be able to see someone and talk with them versus just talking to like a blank screen, right? Like, it feels very different. So, you know, making sure that we
like, come back. What are you doing?
He's throwing in some visual effects for you.
I like it.
So it's just tough. It's a different ballgame. I'm definitely anxious and ready to get back into the school setting and be in person with students, especially for students with special needs. It's so important to have that contact and that in-person support, just because staring at a computer screen can be so tough for anyone, but especially for a student with special needs who may have difficulty with some executive functioning stuff or whatever it is, learning a specific subject, and not having that in-person contact just makes things all that much more difficult. So we're trying to navigate, we're figuring it out as we go along, but it's definitely been a struggle.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I hate when I'm on work calls and people don't have their cameras on. So I can imagine teaching to all these boxes with just names and be like, okay, somebody turn on the camera and say hello. I want to ask Danielle, what are you guys not using Zoom for your classrooms?
No, we're using Google Meets. So district, that's the platform they chose to use. So there were some legal rights that we had to use like Google Meets instead of Zoom.
Got you. Yeah, my company, the nonprofit I work for, I switched from Google Meets to Zoom. So I've worked with both. What other technology are both of you using for your classrooms? Like outside of just the virtual meetings, like what else are you guys using to help students learn?
So we use this cool platform. It's called Seesaw. And so that's where I post assignments and kind of manage like grading and communication with parents. It's really user friendly. So like I can accommodate students' needs, like where they can like record their responses with a microphone, or they can type it in. There's like a camera setting, they can record themselves. It's really nice for me too, because I can like record how to like use the program. And then like that video will kind of be like a help box for them to click on and figure out how to navigate. So that is, besides Google Meets and Seesaw, those are like the 2 big things that I'm using.
Got you. And Matt?
So my school, obviously we use Zoom for the virtual instruction, like the face-to-face part, if that even is a thing anymore. But we had a program that we were already using called Echo, which is through a group called New Tech Network, which is something that our school had put in place last year. So the whole school was already using this learning management system called Echo. It is intuitive. It's a steep learning curve though. So there were already kind of some gripes with this program last year. And then we became reliant on it, and that exacerbated these kind of issues. But it really is, I like it as a tool. I think it gives a lot of options for differentiation and posting different types of assignments. Obviously with any new technology, there's a learning curve. And I think not being able to sit down with students face to face and walk them through it has caused some issues. But yeah, so we aren't using any traditional like Seesaw, Google Classroom type of thing like that. We're using this program called Echo, which has been interesting.
Gotcha. And have you guys faced issues, either of you, with students who don't have access to technology, and how has that worked with your schools to get these students access to like Wi-Fi or computers or anything that they need?
Yeah, I think that my district, we in the spring, they like did this huge order of making sure that every student had a device, and then getting hotspots In the spring, they were like, there was a program, I can't remember who it was through, but they were offering like free internet to families. A lot of those resources went away in the fall in terms of free internet, but we definitely, the district purchased a lot of Chromebooks and a lot of hotspots. All of my students have access to that. I think where we're running into issues is there were a lot of cuts in budgets. So now, like all, like technology, there have been like a lot of issues. So computers will break and when we're short on being able to replace those. So, luckily my school, we have really great admin. They were able to write a grant, and for my school, we were able to get like 40 extra devices. So that was pretty great and helped out a lot. So I think that Matt works in a different district, so I think his
yeah, my school was already moving towards 1-to-1. So 2 years ago, every incoming freshman got a Chromebook. And then last year, every single student in the high school got a Chromebook. So we were already kind of set up for something like this just by chance. And so getting students devices hasn't been much of an issue. I think the main issue has been with connectivity and internet. So our school was passing out hotspots for families. And there was that program like Danielle was mentioning, I think it was through Xfinity, where they were providing free internet for the rest of the semester. But it still becomes an issue. I think mostly like Danielle's been down in the kitchen while I've been teaching, and she's heard these kind of convoluted conversations with kids because their internet cuts out or our internet lags or whatever it is. So then we become reliant on using the text box, and it's not ideal, but I think our district has done a really fantastic job of trying to make sure that students do have access and making sure that families have a way to access the internet, especially with everything going on. So hotspots have been really kind of something that the district has relied on for students that do have difficulty accessing the internet otherwise. And I think it's gone pretty well. We monitor it pretty regularly. Our school has dedicated 8 staff members just to engagement and following up with families. So we have this school-wide essentially tracker where every student gets a line, and there's all this information about notes and kind of keeping up with them. So we have 8 people at the school who have been really dedicated to following up with families, going and doing home visits, checking in and making sure that internet is still stable, right, and accessible.
Wow, that is amazing. I can't imagine every school has that, but just to have those, one person who is kind of just moved into a role like that at a school that she's at, and it just seems like that's what's needed to make sure things are happening, that you guys don't have to do it. You can focus on teaching, and somebody else can deal with making sure all the technology is working, students are still engaged, parents are aware, all that type of stuff. And you hit
right, and obviously we still get things that slip through the cracks and then fall on us. Like, hey, this kid's been constantly being booted out of these Zoom calls for whatever reason. Got a problem solve around there, but I would say the base effort by the district has been pretty strong to make sure that families are connected.
Gotcha. And I asked Danielle, so I'll ask you this as well. How August came, you're going virtual. What was your mindset? I don't know if you have the same students as the year before, if you have to have new families. How did you go into go into build relationship mode at the beginning of the school year?
That was tough. It was really hard to do that, to be honest, like really building in, trying to incorporate our own interests, doing like Zoom slideshows about ourselves and getting students to fill out some information about them so we can like virtually meet, even though we may not know each other. And then just trying to keep Zoom calls engaging and involved. And for the first week or so, not necessarily doing much content, just doing a lot of digging into like relationships and stuff like that. But, it was tough going, and it's definitely faltered, I would say, throughout the year as we went from virtual back to hybrid, and then from hybrid back to virtual. Like, it's just kind of dropped off. And so I'm hoping that, getting back into the building, we can really start rebuilding those relationships with students. But yeah, it's definitely been a challenge, especially for ninth graders coming into high school, that have to do so virtually has been tough. They don't know their teachers. They don't know one another. Some of them have never even like stepped foot in the high school building. So it's just kind of a bizarre intro to high school life.
Yeah, I can't imagine going. I mean, Danielle, you know this, but our high school built that random ninth grade center. So like they didn't have, like, I can't imagine going to high school and not meeting upperclassmen. Like if this was us, we wouldn't even be doing that because they didn't even have, for us now, that wouldn't be an option. But thinking about, you guys both seem like you want to get back in the classroom. What are some techniques you've learned during doing virtual teaching that you might use or incorporate into your teaching when you move back to in-person? Although you've kind of gone in person and then moved back. So is there anything you will definitely use when you go specifically in person? Or you just all out the window, like forget all this virtual stuff, we're going back in person?
Well, so for me, I have to continue teaching the kids at home and the kids in the classroom on the computer. And so I'll still use the same systems. Because like I was saying earlier, it was kind of parent choice. So I will still have the half of the class that are going to remain at home. So even though they're coming back in person, it's not like traditional in person. So I think a lot of it will probably stay the same. I think the one thing that I'm really looking forward to is those students who will be coming back in person that kind of lack that engagement when we're fully remote. So like when I have them here in the school, I can like teach them and make sure that they are doing what they're supposed to. But when they're at home, I don't have control over that. So I think that's one thing I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, I think for me, just learning different tips and techniques with our learning management system, that will definitely carry over. Some of these tools that I use digitally to differentiate assignments and to differentiate grading will definitely carry over. And then I think also just some of the technological tools that we've learned now that every student is one-to-one will continue to give us a chance to let students be creative and kind of express their learning in ways that break out of the traditional, like write a paper about it, make a poster about it, doing it different ways that involve technology, because especially at the high school level, that's the way the world is shifting. And if we got to be real about it, then we need to teach our students the technical skills that they'll need to be successful in whatever they want to do, which nowadays, we don't need to learn as much of the traditional like algebra, calculus, trigonometry. Like, we should be teaching students how to live and adapt in a increasingly virtual world. So I think it's kind of a blessing in disguise, because it has pushed us more towards that kind of the newer technology stuff, which is what we should be doing anyway, because that's just the way things are going.
Matt, a math teacher is going to come for you as soon as they see that response. So I hope you.
Yeah.
So just confirm.
Not to call out math, social study, like some of these things as well, but students should be learning these technical skills and technical kind of proficiencies as well as the content. And so I think pushing things towards the margin in terms of technology has been beneficial for that.
Gotcha.
I do think that the technology piece has been really fun to use in a second grade setting. So for example, Shane, you'll like this because you're into making films, but my kids had to do an informational paper, and I added in this technology piece that they would type out their paper, and then they would create like a commercial to inform their viewers about different habitats. And so they made these videos and they were awesome. Like some of the kids created pictures and were like going through and showing like their diagrams of the pictures. Other kids had like their stuffed animals that they were like bringing in.
One kid had the commercial break.
Oh yeah.
It was so funny.
Had a commercial break, played music. Wow. And then another kid like brought in a sibling and had like a karaoke like microphone and was like basically interviewing the sister to like inform her about habitats. And they were so great. So I think like, last year I taught the same unit and we didn't do that. The kids wrote a paper and created like a book. And so this has definitely been something that I will like continue to do because it was so awesome.
That just gave me like a flashback of making like shoebox, like I guess you would call it habitats with like saran wrap and all these little things in like 3rd or 4th grade. It was like how creative a student has to be to do that, but to create a commercial with a microphone and karaoke, I imagine that was probably like the highlight of your year so far to see that happen.
Yeah, it was pretty great. And another highlight was my kids were super into the election. And I've never had a 2nd grade class just like so with it with like current events. Like you're talking about 7 and 8-year-olds. And they were like just like so into it. And just like, yeah, we watched the debate last night and I thought this was a good point. I thought that was a good point. And I'm like, who are you? like it was awesome. So we that was definitely just like being able to have these real conversations. I feel like sometimes people think like, oh, these are just kids, you can't really talk about those kind of things, but like that's not the case. So that was another highlight. My kids were super into the election.
I was actually going to get to that. So you said something about you wrote something about like you're real with your students even though they're young. I wanted you to give me an example of that, but I imagine the election was an example of like getting real with your students.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think like with just with everything that has been going on with the world this year, just having those conversations and with the political stuff, as a teacher, you kind of have to like stay back a little bit and not say like, you should vote for this person, and let them have their thoughts. So I kind of just like lead the discussion and let them kind of talk. But, they're in 2nd grade. So you see a lot of like their parents' views come out and like the way that they think. So it's really interesting.
Matt, what has been a highlight for you as a high school teacher this year?
That's a tough one. I'm actually gonna, it's been tough going with students. But I'm think a highlight for me is as a staff, we've really been able to kind of increase our collaboration and benefit in a way from being remote because it gives us an ability to get really creative with our planning and how we're going to engage students. And like I said, we have those 8 staff members dedicated, and there's a lot of collaboration and communication around getting specific students or families engaged. So I think a highlight for me, apart from the teaching specifically, has been seeing that collaboration kind of increase among staff members and everyone being really dedicated to student needs and finding what works for specific students. So I think my highlight has been more on the staff collaboration side and seeing that kind of really continue to grow in a time that's super different.
I love that. I love it in like starring so I don't miss questions. And like as soon as I start, like you'll get to it and you'll get to it. It's like hopping back. So you guys are like on point with everything you're saying. Because one of my questions was like, how are you guys creating the atmosphere amongst your staff? How are you connecting and creating like a virtual teachers lounge so where you guys can connect and like, oh, I need help with this. Oh, I need help with this idea and this lesson plan. So Matt already answered the question. So now I'll throw it to Danielle. How are you connecting with your fellow teachers to kind of create, I'll call it a virtual teachers lounge?
So I would say that each teacher kind of has like their core people that they kind of like work with in, or problem solving around like instruction and engagement. So for example, I have my other second grade teacher, and then we each have basically an instructional coach. And so we meet a lot, but as a staff, we meet twice a week for like 20 minutes. And usually it's kind of just like giving shout outs, which is really hard because when you only see like your crew of 6 people, you keep shouting out the same people. So I would say at an elementary level, I wouldn't like, we're not collaborating as much as Matt. And I think Matt's role is really unique because he has to work with a lot of different people. So I know it's something that our admin is really trying to like push towards, is more opportunities for us to collaborate with each other across the school. But we kind of just stay in our little bubbles. It's kind of sad, you don't get to see everybody like you would in the building. So that's definitely something that I've been missing.
Yeah, I can think of, so I don't know if you know this, but I worked in a school for a year, and I just remember like there was a teacher's lounge, and it was like I was with the younger teacher, so like the 4 of us would just go have lunch somewhere else. But like that interaction kept the day fun. Outside of working with students who would say hilarious things, but like being able to like, all right, I'm having issues with this student. What are your ideas? Like, what do you know about them, et cetera, et cetera. So I definitely see how that can be like a loss for like a loss for like what makes your job fun. But you guys live together. I want to ask, like, how do you guys collaborate slash don't collaborate when you guys are working in the same household and both teaching all day long?
It gets really tricky now that like I said, after Thanksgiving, the 3-week window between winter break has been really tough because we are both working from home. And so it's like, all right, you got the kitchen today, or are you going to be in the extra bedroom? So just like coordinating who's going to be where. And then, we have this puppy, so taking care of the puppy. Like our breaks don't line up. So we're like on completely different schedules until about like 3:30. So yeah, we're kind of just like doing our thing. I'm live all day. So like I'm on a computer for like 8 hours. And when I'm not with kids and I'm like planning with my coach or my teammates or my student teacher. So yeah, I'm just like on a computer.
Yeah, I think in terms of like our collaboration and like bouncing ideas off of each other, I'm going to say this and tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it's more often like in the times when we're like venting about something or like frustrated with something that, the other person can kind of drop us down a little bit from being escalated or being frustrated and say, well, hey, have you thought of this? Have you tried this? And, just being able to bounce ideas off of each other in that way. A lot of times it's me venting to her, not so much her venting to me, but she is really, it's really nice to have an outside perspective, especially an outside perspective of someone who knows education as well as she does. So it's just, I think it's hard to understand as a non-teacher or someone who doesn't work in schools, like what someone that does work in schools deals with. And so for both of us to know, what the other one is like essentially going through and like have that perspective is really helpful for like problem solving.
I give a lot of great advice is what he's trying to say.
Yes.
And that's why you're engaged. So I just want to confirm, you guys, both of you are going back into the school in January, or just you?
I am supposed to have students come back in person January 11th. So I will have to return to the building on the 4th, and then that first week back, everyone will be virtual, but then my students will come back that following Monday. So that is the plan.
Our district has said we'll be virtual until probably February 1st, at which point they're gonna reevaluate and determine how it looks. It's been, I feel like the whole process has just been a series of like dates where they're like, well, you know, come this day, we'll reevaluate and we'll see what it looks like. But it's also the only practical way to do it, right? If you say, okay, February 1st, we're all going back to in-person learning no matter what, and it turns out that, you know, COVID is bad across the county, across the community, and it doesn't make sense, then, you know, you can't go back and say, never mind. Like, so it's been this series of like dates and checkmark, or, you know, check-ins that they're like, well, we'll see what it looks like then. So I don't really hold anything to a specific date, because I know it can all change, you know, momentarily. I just think back to like last March where they were like, all right, you know, on Thursday night, they were like, all right, you know, Friday is going to be your last day in person. We don't know when you'll go back. And it turned out we were at, you know, remote the whole rest of the semester. So it's been very interesting. It's kept us on our toes and kind of forced us to be really, really flexible with it.
Definitely flexible. I would say that I appreciate like the February date. I feel like it's a little soon to say, okay, we're having everyone come back January 11th, just because like with the holidays, I think like just to kind of be in a safe zone, they should have pushed it back a little later. But you know, if we've learned anything, they make the decision. So we can, you know, teachers can think all they want, but.
So there's a question kind of about just moving on to like your personal lives. Is there been a moment where you guys have felt like your health might have been put at risk because of your jobs, or like you guys went back into the school October? Was there a point like, ooh, this might not be a good idea? Do I need to make a different decision for my life for this because of my job?
Yeah. I mean, like we were talking about earlier with like the light switch of like, oh my gosh, teachers are heroes. Now get back into the classroom, you know. It did very much feel like we were being forced to go back in the classroom without a real plan in place, because it was essentially like, we need the economy to continue to run. And so it felt like we were like very much just like kind of thrown back in to things. And yeah, I mean, it's scary. A lot of family members lost, students lost their parents. Just a lot of tragic things have happened. And I know that it doesn't really feel real to anyone until it happens to like them personally. But yeah, I would say that it was pretty scary. I was telling you about the classroom setup. And when I like walked into my room and was looking at the setup, I was like I might really get COVID. So yeah, those were my emotions.
Yeah, I was definitely the same way. I mean, you know, kids wearing a mask under their nose or sitting, you know, getting up and moving around. It's, you know, you can't, as a teacher, you can't like strictly enforce COVID regulations. I mean, kids are going to do what they do at times. And in this kind of heightened state of awareness, you're like, so there were definitely a lot of times when I felt super unsafe in the school building. I had a kid come in late to first period and was sniffling, had a cough. And I was like, why are you here? Like, what's going on? He's like, no, it's just a cold. It's just a cold. And I'm like, no, like, you got to get out of here. You got to leave. Not to be rude, but also to be like, if I let this kid hang out in class and it doesn't turn out to be a cold, then I'm putting everyone here at risk. And so, you know, we had a COVID scare in late October, I want to say. And I had been in a meeting with pretty much the whole SPED team the day before. And I was like, man, did I just give everyone on the SPED team COVID? You know, like, so these little teeny things just in this heightened sense of like anxiety and awareness turn everything to like, turn the volume up to 11 where you're like hyper aware. And I believe that with students, you know, they don't have necessarily that hyper awareness. They don't share it. So being in a setting where you can't control, you can obviously control yourself and what you do to stay safe, but you can't control every person's every single movement to make sure that they're staying safe. And I think there was a lot of anxiety for me in that regard.
Yeah. So we have like the health screenings at like the entrance of every door. So each grade level has to go in a different door of the building. And so we have to ask a series of questions, you know, like, do you have a runny nose? Do you have a cough? And then we have to take the temperature and all of these things. And it does feel very weird to tell kids, no, you're going to have to go home and be virtual for the day. You know, because you didn't hit the health screening checklist. So, you know, like with Matt saying, hey, like, you know, kind of being like very cautious of the student that's sick, like we were doing the same thing. We had to turn our gym of the school into like a quarantine center. So kids that had any like symptoms or got sick, they would go into the gym until their parents were able to come and pick them up. So I definitely have run into some situations where my kids were sick and had, you know, symptoms, and yeah, it got pretty scary. I had like 3 kids really sick, and like 2 of them throw up one day, and I like went home and was like, oh my gosh, like what is going on? And this was, you know, after being back in person for like 2 weeks. And I was just, you get really kind of like anxious and paranoid of like, oh my gosh, what is this? Is this COVID? Is this just like germs and people, like everyone getting sick?
Yeah, like schools are already a cesspool of germs and disgustingness, and then you add this like insane virus to the mix, and it's like, whoa. I think another thing is that we required kids to like self-report symptoms. We required families to self-report test results. And I think there's a lot that can fall through the cracks there, right? If a family doesn't have the resources to go get a test and they send their kid to school not knowing that a kid may be positive, then, you know, that kind of defeats the whole purpose. Or if a kid, you know, they say I forget what the series of questions is, but it's like cough, sore throat, runny nose, body aches. And if a kid just reflectively says no and walks in the building, then it's like, you know, you're putting a lot of onus on students and families to be really truthful, which I think, you know, looking at how society as a whole has responded to COVID hasn't always been, you know, you get these anti-maskers and these people that think it's a hoax or whatever. And so I think putting that onus on students and families to be kind of collective in their thinking and looking out for one another is a tall task. I think our school actually did fairly well with, we only had a couple of in-person active cases until it got really bad again. But so I think our school did fairly well with it, but that's a lot to ask students and families is to kind of shift their paradigm from, you know, looking out for yourself and your family to looking out for the greater community. It's just it's a very like cultural thing within the United States. It's why we look at some of these countries like Taiwan and South Korea that had a much more of a kind of collective identity and thought process around that versus a country like the United States with this like rugged individualism where it's almost every man for themselves. So just putting that onus on the community and putting that on people to be like really transparent and truthful and collective in their thought process. It was a shift, but I think people kind of rallied around it as a community and as a school community to be really, really conscientious about it.
Yeah, something you said just really hit with me when you said like you're asking a student to really go out of this mundane mode and just really think about their symptoms. Like I'm thinking in high school, my mom's like, "How was your day?" Fine. Like you're asking a kid now, like, "How do you feel?" Fine. No. Yes. Like you don't get many words out of high schoolers. And then like a second grader, it's like I feel like younger kids are a lot more honest and like real about their feelings. They're like, "Oh, I'm feeling sick today." Like, okay, well, Johnny, you got to go home today. But like I can't, like high schoolers just like, "Oh yeah, let me think about this morning and last night." And then you have to think about the part of like if their parents are going to work, like they went to work, they were around other people, they came back, now they gave it to you if they had it or carried it, and now they brought it back into school. So like there's a lot of outside factors that are like chain, or link to the chain that just then gets to the school where you then have 100 plus people or hundreds of people in a building. Just seems like a lot to have to like think of. I'm not trying to scare you for January. It's a lot to think of when you're going into a building.
Yeah, I also think like thinking through the lens of a high schooler, like, man, I've gone to school with a cough a million times. Like it's not anything. And now all of a sudden I have to be really, really aware of that and be really truthful about it. Like, it's like you said, it's kind of a long chain of things that will kind of trigger if someone says, "Oh, I've had a cough."
Also on the other side of that, so you're saying that if I have a cough and a runny nose, I can go home for the day? So I think like definitely there are students that will play that game as well. Because in person you're going to be asked a lot more than if you're at home and you have kind of like the control over what's going on. I think there's that side of things. I did find it really interesting. So I kind of told you my class was split 50-50, like in person and then remote. And a large percent of my families that were remote ended up having COVID, which I thought was very interesting because, like that, it was, I think a lot of it had to do with the families were in healthcare. And so that's where they ended up catching the virus. And so I thought it was just kind of interesting to see those rates looking at like in person versus remote.
That makes you think that like maybe they were like, I work in healthcare, I'm just gonna not put the school at risk because I know where I'm at every day and I don't want to like exacerbate that. But I want to go, Danielle, did you say you had students lose parents to COVID this past year?
Yeah, so recently, one of my students from last year's father passed away at the beginning of December.
Wow.
Yeah, very, very tragic.
And how does the school like your school has a lot of resources? How does the school like I don't know how to like not remedy. Obviously, you can't remedy that situation, but how do they help that student and that family in this time of need? Really?
Yeah, so I know that the school really came together like financially for the family. And then we have like a team where when something like this happens, we kind of like offer the families outside resources. So providing them with like free therapy or that, those sort of options, if that is something that they're interested in. And then within the school, we would provide, those same resources to the students. So working with the school social worker and supporting in those ways. So.
Okay. Well, wow. That's all I can say to that because I couldn't imagine losing a family member to COVID, let alone just losing a family member, but your parent at I'm imagining third grade is just crazy. And so I just want to ask you all, my camera does this every once in a while, it'll come back on in a second. Hopefully, there we go. What are your hopes for next semester?
I just want to have like increased engagement, and that I'm able to meet the needs of all of my students. And so one thing that I feel is a big pressure on educators is, you know, we have to make sure that kids are at this, you know, level of performance before moving on to the next grade. And so if you're thinking about, okay, we lost 2 months in the spring and now we're already a semester into the fall, you know, that we've been doing this for 9 months. So just filling those gaps of students that are performing behind grade level, and then just really just want to be able to like teach the students. And so I think without the engagement piece, that is super, super hard. One thing that I am a little bit anxious for is the pressures that are going to be put on educators moving forward. So like once we're kind of out of this pandemic, then it's going to be like, all right, well, we lost all this time. So now you need to do this, 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 and this. And so I'm kind of like, I know we're not there yet, but just really anxious for that.
Yeah, I mean, all I can say is just I hope we can increase our engagement. I mean, everything stems from that. Everything stems from having students actually attending, engaging. So if we can build that up and get it a little bit more solid, then a lot more of our job is going to just flow from there. So yeah, I think one thing that I was thinking about was just, I think people are going to take education for granted, or less people are going to take education for granted. I know that's kind of been a running thing, but if, you know, March 13th, when we shut down and we were like, oh, we're going to be teaching from home for a little bit, I was like, great, this is awesome. This is cool. And now 9 months into it, I'm like, get me out of here. I hate this timeline. Like, put me back in school. We need to be back in school. And so I've heard that even from students who previously were like, man, I don't really like coming to school. I'm not feeling it. Now they're like, I wish we could just be back in school like we used to. So I think that factor of taking things for granted will cause people to be more engaged and more dedicated to education.
Gotcha. This is gonna be a random question, but you guys are both teachers now. And I don't know if that's like your dream to be a teacher forever, but have your career aspirations changed at all because of everything that's happened with the pandemic?
We've talked about this a lot, and I was actually just talking about this yesterday. Is just like, man, really wish I was like in ed tech before all this happened, because like in March, you know, it was just, everyone was like, all right, how are we going to do this? What's this going to look like? So if there was anything that I wish I was kind of like an expert and invested in, it would be ed tech.
Ditto.
All right.
I think one thing though is like, I had previously thought that administration might be a route that I was interested, and this, you know, shifting to remote learning and taking on a job that's, you know, it's caused me to be a little bit more administrative in the job, and less of like an instructor. And so it makes me think that, man, maybe that's not the way I want to go. But like Danielle said, like educational technology would be a huge come up right now. And so it's changed that perspective quite a bit, I would say.
Yeah, I have my master's in administration, and you know, I always thought like, oh yeah, you know, want to be a principal, but like working closely with my principal and assistant principal and seeing how they had to write up all of these plans, and they are spending, you know, weeks on this plan, and then all of a sudden the district tells us something completely different. And just, you know, like just seeing how they are like staying up late trying to write like these safety plans for coming back, and then literally the next day being told, oh, all of that's out the window. And so, I mean, Matt was talking about being flexible, just like everybody being flexible. I mean, I know that there's a lot on classroom teachers always, but just administrators who have to have all of these plans in place to bring staff and students back into the building. It was pretty crazy to be on the team, like working with admin to like see all of the behind the scenes of that.
Gotcha. Yeah, I can imagine going through all that work. It's like, nah, not this time. Maybe in a few months. I do have some Instagram submitted questions that I'm gonna try to run through quickly. First one is, are you okay?
I'm okay.
I mean, we're on break right now, so yes, but yeah, I mean, there have been a lot of times where, like, you know, I've cried. So like thinking about from March until now. So, but yeah, I think like I feel super grateful for the group of kids that I have this school year. And so I think like that makes a major difference in like what I'm able to accomplish with my teaching with them, is just like how awesome they are.
How has the pandemic widened the opportunity gap? If you can speak on that huge overarching question of American education.
Yeah, I mean, it's just exacerbated it a ton. I mean, even thinking about kids who access to internet, right? Like students that have good, solid, consistent access to high quality internet face one less hurdle than students who don't have that. And having parents that might be around to help students learn and provide extra resources for students to get a tutor, to get some extra help, versus, you know, parents who are working a couple more jobs or don't necessarily have the resources or the energy right now to focus on doing those sort of things. It's just totally exacerbated it. So I mean, everything, it becomes so much more apparent, and it just widened, like it's a negative feedback loop. So it's really increased it. From my mind, I think that we're going to be seeing for years to come the effects on the opportunity gap specifically. And it's not going to be something that, I mean, it's obviously something that we're seeing right off the bat, but the long-term impacts of that are really kind of worrisome.
Yeah, I 100% agree with Matt.
How can individual people help?
Just anyone, just any individual person.
How can I, as Shane over here, how can I, as a non-teacher, non-person in education, help?
I mean, I think that like what you're doing right now helps, right? So like you're like allowing teachers' voices to be heard. And I think during this pandemic, like that was something that was missing. There were all of these people who are not in classrooms with students making decisions for teachers that have to be in the classrooms. And so I think like, you know, this is a great way to have our voices heard.
Yeah, I'm going to build off that, not only raising awareness, but keeping that around and keeping that awareness around after it's all said and done, and realizing that, you know, education isn't just something that we need to focus on during a worldwide pandemic. It needs to be something that, you know, if we truly care about it, needs to be something that is a policy priority at the local, at the state, and at the national level. And I think it's kind of come into focus along with healthcare during the pandemic and a number of things. But just not letting it lose steam after the pandemic, and continuing to advocate for policy positions, especially those that will, like we talked about the opportunity gap, especially thinking about policy positions and through a lens of equity, and providing opportunity for all students, and not letting it just be forgotten when the pandemic's over. I think carrying on that level of advocacy and that level of awareness will do huge things.
I mean, I was gonna try not to add any points on these questions, but what you just said about like this always being a thing. Like I've always thought teachers were great people, but when I had to go like legit was put in the classroom to teach kids, which I never wanted to do, but was part of my job, I was just like, everybody should do this. Just one day, put everybody in the classroom and make them just have to handle a group of students, no matter the age. Like I know I worked with high schoolers, middle schoolers. I never went down second grade. I know I can't handle that. But I just knew like, okay, there's a certain group I can handle. And there's also just like, there's just so much that goes into it. And that was just, for me, it was just maybe like part of a year. Like if you're doing this all the time, multiple classes, all day long, like I just think it's just one of those things where you have to, you shouldn't have to experience it because you should just know teachers are doing great work. But like, I feel like that gives you an opportunity to be like, okay, they're doing a lot, pay them more money, give them those dollars, because teachers deserve way bigger salaries than what they're given, or what y'all are given. And I don't even know what you guys do, but I just think teachers all just need at least a $10,000 bump, no matter what their salary is. Probably more than that. So I'm gonna start at 10.
All right, sign us up. We'll take it.
Okay. What have been the best tools you've used to support virtual learning?
The best tools?
Yeah.
I think I don't know if this is a tool. I'm going to say it's a tool, but like my kids are obsessed with like breakout rooms. So I think like that allows them to socialize. Like you know, like a huge part of kids at the elementary level are, it's all about like socializing and building relationships, and they need that time to like talk and interact with other kids that are outside of their home. So been using that. I think like with me too, I'm really big with just like building relationships with kids. And I know that seems pretty hard through a virtual setting, because if something's going on with a kid at home, it's really hard for them to like tell us that over a computer. And so I think like giving my students opportunities to like write me like messages and notes and check-ins with them is really important. So those are some things that I've been using.
Yeah. I kind of going off that, like figuring out what mode of communication works for a given student, not just assuming that, oh, I'm going to send this email to all the kids in the class and then assume that they're going to get back to me via email. So really being, you know, breaking out all the tools for communicating with kids. I set up a Google Voice so I could text students, text families, calling, email, Google chat on breakout room, like literally anything we can do to get in touch with students. But then also a lot of the technological stuff. Jamboard's been really great. Pear Deck's been a cool tool. And then the learning management system that we use at our school, Echo, like I talked about earlier, has been a really cool tool to use and to figure out. So, I mean, there's a lot of different stuff, and we're still obviously learning a lot of it and figuring out these tools. So, it's been helpful. Screencastify has been a tool that I really like. It allows me to essentially like record either my voice or record a video in the corner as I like manipulate my screen, so students can see what's going on my end, and I can talk them through something. So that's been a great tool as well.
Nice. I feel like there's so many different tools that I never heard of. Like I have a lot of friends who are teachers, which is kind of how this idea came up. Like I want to hear y'all, and I want other people to hear your stories, but like there's so many different technologies that have either been around and just weren't used, or now they're just like being created out of nothing. So yeah, EdTech is the place to be if you're trying to. Okay, so
My kids love like having guests come on virtually. So Shane, if you ever want to be like a guest speaker in second grade, fun times.
Okay, so I started cursing in second grade. I'll never forget. It's like that's where cursing first started for me, and so I've been really good at like my whole like altering my words and that. But I feel like lately I've been terrible at it. But I think I could handle it for second grade. I've done some guest talking in different places, not with kids, but I've been in high school, like in person guest talking in high school. So if you really want me to talk in high school, I mean in high school, in the second grade or in high school, sure, I have plenty of time. Um, so this is kind of a dual question, something I had and another person submitted. So I'll just combine two questions. Amidst the pandemic, from like, I feel like from March, May to like August until election season, there was this huge resurgence of a spotlight on Black Lives Matter and everything that's happening because of what's been happening in America. Were you guys provided with Have you had to address this in your classrooms or with colleagues, one, and were you provided with anti-racism resources for your course curriculum in your teachings?
So starting in the fall, yes. That has been a big like focus for my school this year. So we have been provided resources. We have had, like guest speakers from the community reaching out to the community. So we do have resources starting in the fall, and in March, not so much. I think a lot of it comes to just like having conversations, like I said, like just having real conversations with your kids and figuring out a way to do that depending on the age group of the student. So that has been like what it's been like for me.
So I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a mixed bag with if we've been provided with stuff. But a lot of teachers, especially English and social studies teachers, have really taken the onus on themselves to do a lot more kind of social awareness campaigns. And so our school shift to a model where we use a lot of project-based learning. And so a lot of the projects in English and social studies have been built around kind of social awareness, and it's given students a lot of choice in what issues to be focusing on. But a lot of students have focused on issues surrounding the Black Lives Matter movement, specifically like police brutality and kind of like contemporary civil rights. And so like there are some really cool projects that teachers have done based off that. One of the projects I'm thinking of that kind of ties in with that is that students did a project in their 10th grade English class where they make a case for removing or keeping a specific monument. So that kind of ties back with this discussion around these statues that kind of became this big kind of cultural discussion and very tied in with the discussion around race in our country's history. And so students kind of went through this process of examining some local monuments and making a case for, should this monument stay, should this monument go, and why. And then our 12th grade English students, we read The Hate U Give, which is a fantastic novel. And we did a lot of work around kind of police brutality, Black Lives Matter, and then looked at the civil rights movement because, that's ever present in the book. And then we moved on to giving students a choice on what kind of social issues they want to address and creating an awareness campaign around a specific social issue. We did not tell students that they needed to focus on Black Lives Matter or police violence, but a lot of students, after reading The Hate U Give, took it upon themselves to focus on raising awareness around those issues. And we gave them a lot of creativity in coming up with campaigns to raise awareness and have some sort of call to action. And it was kind of cool to see students get really involved with it. So yeah, and then our school-wide, we have really made a push towards equity. and having a lot of professional development centered around equity and looking at all of our decisions through a lens of equity. So, you know, I can't say whether admin was prompted by the Black Lives Matter movement to do that, but it certainly kind of manifests itself in the decisions that they're making at an administrative level, and then the decisions we're making even just within the class on how to present and approach different content and student engagement and stuff. So yeah, there's been a big push towards it. Whether I don't know whether people did it. I'm sure a lot of educators did it because of you know, the events in May, but I also think we were moving towards it in general as a school, which is really kind of a cool. I think that our school should take a lot of pride in that, because we are in a very our district as a whole is very white, and a lot of the schools are kind of rural and conservative, and so I think, you know, to have a more diverse student population and have that student population really looking at projects and issues that speak to that is really kind of a point of pride. We're not ignoring it. We're not trying to brush over it. We're trying to tackle it head on. And I think the project-based learning model really gives us an ability to do that.
Yeah, one thing that our district just did recently was that we are going to incorporate at the high school level Black history into the curriculum. So now it's going to be a part of the curriculum and not so much like, oh, we only do this in February. So I think that is something great that my district's doing. But like coming back in the fall with everything that, you know, is going on, has been going on, we like really sat down and we were looking at our curriculum, and we start out with like this government unit, right? And so in this government unit, the kids are like reading these books that, you know, obviously police officers are like, there's a book about police officers. And so in this book, it was, you know, police officers keep us safe, police officers protect us. And so as a school, we made the decision that we weren't going to focus on that, and we were going to focus on other people in the community that are also a part of the government. And so those were like decisions that, you know, we made as a school and as a grade level to change.
Wow. So that whole part is interesting, because I can see that being like a point of contention for parents if they knew about that. I imagine a lot of them probably didn't. Your school, Matt, sounds like it's doing a lot of work that probably should be done at a lot of schools. I don't think we did anything like that at our high school, Danielle. And Hate You Give is such a great book. I read that probably 2-3 years ago. Book is way better than the movie. Movie's
Yeah.
The book is so much better. So yeah.
Yeah, we actually when we chose to read The Hate You Give, we had a teacher who like hyper liberal, East Coast, very like politically aware, and basically like, you know, was worried that parents were going to find The Hate You Give to be somehow offensive or inappropriate for 12th graders to be reading, which in my mind is like, I would never ever think that. But she prepared a letter, like a speech for if a parent were to approach her with that. So, you know, I think she has that mindset of you know, not everyone might agree with this book or the message that this book is giving, and how do you defend your choice to read that book with students. And you know, we thank God didn't have anyone complain or mention it. In fact, all the parents I talked to were like, wow, I'm really, really glad that my kid is reading this book. I've actually been reading it with them, and I've learned a lot. So, you know, but just having that in such a kind of tense and divided environment, just having that opposite perspective in mind and being ready to deal with that. I think that was very forward thinking of this teacher to recognize that, whereas the rest of us were like, you know, it's a great book. It's important. It's super topical. And the kids, it takes place in a high schooler's world. So, and obviously not a typical high schooler's world, but, you know, just to have that opposite perspective, especially in such like a kind of like, feels like such a powder keg sometimes. But, you know, I loved reading it with the kids. The students loved it. We did a lot of really cool kind of work with it and surrounding it. And I hope to continue to see that. And not just English and social studies. I would love to see science and math find ways to tie it in. I pick on math. I know it's a lot more difficult for math teachers to build in projects that would be focused on kind of issues surrounding race or police brutality or contemporary like politics. But I think it's important to be tying that stuff in wherever you can.
Yeah, I have a friend who actually I met in Barcelona, Danielle, who is a math professor, and I contacted him, so hopefully he'll sit down for an interview. But he's a professor in math, so way up there. He did some like math modeling around social justice stuff, so I really want to dig into that with him, but we'll see.
Oh, I love that. I want to know more.
Few Instagram questions and then a bunch of short ones. Have your expenses gone up from working from home together?
Wait, has our what?
Sorry, have your expenses gone up from working at home?
Hell no. Sorry, I don't know if I can curse. No, they definitely haven't. I mean, we bought a coffee maker, which we had never had a coffee maker. We bought coffee. So instead of going out, you don't think our expenses have gone down?
Danielle, like, you must not look at the bills, because I see the bills every month and that electricity bill. Danielle's face is
the electricity bill has been going up, but also it comes with the like, you know, with winter and the season.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I actually haven't really, we were talking about the fact that that we haven't been driving as much, but we also bought a new car. So
our expenses have gone down in regards to, I mean, we've been spending money on other things now. But in terms of like the day-to-day, we're not, I have a Starbucks right across the street from my school, and that's like the bane of my existence. So, you know, not buying coffee, not going out to lunch at all, not even stuff as simple as gas. Insurance rates are trending downwards. We're not, you know, we're eating leftovers for lunch. We're able now to be home and start cooking a dinner at home rather than scrambling and like picking something up from the store. So, yeah, our expenses have gone down.
At any point, do you feel that your health was disregarded because of your job?
Like, yes, I think like in so many different ways, and not just like me personally, but educators as a whole, like, yes. And I definitely think that like for my district, they were accommodating people who were requesting to stay at home. So with that, that also puts like twice as many, if not 3 times as many responsibility as teachers who are working in person. And as a classroom teacher, I feel like you really didn't have the like option to say, no, I need to remain like working remotely. I feel like there's kind of like this pressure of like, no, you need to be in person for your kids too. So yeah, it's been so interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I just look at the national debate around it and people saying, well, you know, kids can't catch it as easily and they're not at as high of risk. And it's like, sure, but what about all the adults that are working in a school? Like our school secretaries, like 85, like high risk. And, you know, school wouldn't really run without her. So even though kids can't catch it, as, you know, it's not as transmittable or whatever, or they're not at high of a risk, like we still have individuals that are working in the school building that are in that risk range and often overlooked in this conversation.
Yeah, I feel like when I kept hearing that, I was like, you guys are forgetting there's like 50 adults that have these kids aren't going to school to teach themselves. Like teachers
Right.
have to walk through the hallways, walk through the same doors, use the same bathrooms, use the same pencil sharpener. Like everything is not going to change for adults. So even if the kids can't pass it on, which they can, the teachers are bringing their outside lives into a building, and it's not just one teacher. There's just so much wrong with that. And then we found out that they were lying the whole time anyway. So what do you know?
Yeah, right.
What has been an upside to online learning that you couldn't get in the classroom, if any?
I think getting to know each family on a more personal level, because like everyone's inside their homes, you know, so we get like this real picture of like what each student and like even their teachers, what their home looks like. And so I think just getting like a more personal look inside everyone's life.
Yeah, I think increased collaboration between the staff and students and families has been a huge plus. And then also learning these technology tools that we're gonna hopefully not just be using for pandemic, but post-pandemic as well has been an upside.
All right.
Oh, one more upside is that as a school, I mean, this conversation started last year, but we really have had to reflect on our policies around grading and around grades, and how assignments should be, you know, assigned, and essentially looking at grades not just as like okay, are we just checking boxes and making sure that kids are turning in assignments and doing homework for the sake of doing homework, versus, you know, grades really need to be intentional. Every assignment needs to be really intentional to focus on proficiency in the subject, or proficiency with the content, versus just being there and checking off boxes.
Gotcha. All right, so I have a few fun questions. One serious question that I've passed that I circled. What are you guys doing to support your mental health as teachers?
So I actually have been doing personal training. So I'm trying to get fit for a wedding, but also just like, you know, I said earlier, I'm turning 30. So just like trying to go into a new decade and keep myself like feeling mentally and physically like fresh and good. So I have been just working out a lot.
We got a puppy who's being extra cute right now. So, you know, having the puppy around has helped. It's been a headache at times, but really, you know, every day after, right when virtual class is over, being able to like, all right, we're going for a walk, we're going to the dog park, we're going for a run with him. Just having something to kind of keep us motivated to kind of get out of the house and do something productive for another being and not just ourselves. And then I found a lot of solace in cooking and building kind of a routine, even though sometimes Danielle makes fun of me for it. Like I really like being on a routine and finding that routine. So that's been helpful for me.
Routines are great.
All right, we're going to do the last question so I can get you guys out of here. What was your favorite subject in school?
I was a history nerd. That was actually my major in college was history. And I love being able to teach history too. So history has always been my favorite subject.
Yeah, I was gonna say like civics, and I took some history classes too. So yeah.
Shane, what was your favorite subject?
I loved history until we got into like ancient dynasties in Mr. Causey's class. I hated his class. But usually it was history and Probably something around social studies. I think my favorite class ever was some kind of U.S. law class with Mr. Bussey. He was probably the best class I ever had at O'Fallon. So shout out to Mr. Bussey.
Yeah, I took that same class. Yeah. Oh man, what was it called?
I don't know.
I don't remember it, but it was, yeah, that was a good class.
And food and nutrition, because we made cinnamon rolls and those things are bomb. So
That's true. Yeah, I learned to sew in high school.
and then marketing with Gibson because we did no work. But that's a whole different story. Like the test came straight out of the book. So you can literally look at the book and be like, okay, there's the test. Anyway, I'm not snitching on nobody. So what's your favorite dish to cook?
Ooh, I don't know. We've been trying new stuff recently. So, okay, but hands down, probably like making like a curry. So it's like fun. I'd make this like curry cauliflower soup, which doesn't sound good, but it's actually really good. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's probably
I think soups have been our favorite for a while. Was it last year or 2 years ago? We tried to do a winter of soups and just made a ton of different soups. And so I feel like I'm saying the word soup a lot, but like we love making soup, all sorts of different soups, chicken noodle soup, tomato soup.
Okay, now I feel like you're just trying to say soup with the emphasis on the P.
Soup.
Best gift you've ever given or received?
Best what?
Gift, present.
Given. Well, hello, me. I'm a great gift. No, I don't know, Shane. That's a hard question. Who wrote in that one?
Oh, these are just questions that I have.
Oh, okay. Oh, best gift. I'm gonna be really cheesy. Probably my engagement ring.
It's like married couples and parents. It's always the ring or the kid. It's one of the two.
Oh.
Oh, yeah. I was trying not to be cliche. That's why I said myself, but
I don't know. I'm not super gift oriented, or I don't really think about all that. Best gift. I'm gonna go ahead and say I don't think I've ever given a great gift. I have given advice on a great gift though, so I'll go with that. My aunt wanted to buy my brother a graduation gift, and she asked what he might like, and I told her a nice pair of headphones. And she bought him all four of my aunts went in on like a pair of noise canceling, whatever, really nice headphones, and he had them for something like 10 years and loved them until they were not working anymore, and then he just replaced that pair. So I'm gonna give myself props for saying that.
You didn't give yourself props on the gift she just said was the best gift she ever got. Was the gift that you gave her, and you didn't take that clue.
And then
that's the second best gift.
And also his grandmother had, like, since we couldn't be with like family, because of everything going on, his grandma had us like Christmas brunch delivered yesterday, and like a whole spread, and it was like wonderful. And I can't believe that you just said your brother's headphones.
All right, well, this is clearly not a good question to ask, Matt. If you could eat one,
you can edit that out, right?
Say what?
You can edit that out, right?
If I could edit out me saying we didn't do any work in Gibson's class. I got an A. I did the work. I'm saying it wasn't hard. It wasn't hard. It was an easy A.
Yeah, and I also have to say something about when, I wasn't making any like negative comments towards police officers, because I know a lot of great police officers and I have family that's police officers. But given the demographics of my students, we decided to learn about smoke jumpers, which if no one knows about smoke jumpers, it was very relevant to Colorado because we had a ton of fires, and smoke jumpers are really cool.
Yeah, and I took it as, it's not that we're not saying you're not good people. We're saying that we're going to spotlight somebody else this year.
Yeah.
If you could eat one vegetable for the rest of your life, what would it be?
One vegetable.
Ooh, that is tough.
we've been super into mushrooms lately. We've been making a lot of like mushroom sauces for like pastas and everything, but I don't know. I really like vegetables.
I would go with asparagus. I think I love asparagus.
I would maybe probably Brussels sprouts.
Y'all like the nasty vegetable.
Oh,
Actually,
What's yours? Like a carrot?
Pepper.
Okay, here's a question for you, and I'll get to my answer. Is a potato a vegetable or not?
No.
No, it's like a.
Doesn't a vegetable have to have seeds?
No, all I know is the vegetable, the seed has to be in the fruit for it to be a fruit. But I don't know about
I don't think potato is a vegetable, because if it was, I would have said that.
Change it to what's your favorite fruit, or what fruit would you?
Well, that's too easy.
Yeah.
I would say watermelon. But
I don't know what my vegetable would be. I've been on this keto diet, so like a lot of vegetables have too many carbs in them apparently, which I never knew, but I'm about to switch up from this. I need my vegetables. I would say peppers, probably peppers, all of them.
Peppers is a good one.
Peppers and onions, just oven roasted.
Pretty universal.
But like asparagus makes your pea smell, and Brussels sprouts, you have to cook them right. I made them the other day, actually, they were really good, but I usually don't have good Brussels sprouts.
So what you need to do is you need to chop up some bacon, cook it in the skillet beforehand. Take out the bacon before they're super crispy, then throw in the Brussels sprouts, and then throw in some onions and garlic a little bit later so they don't get super burnt.
Cook it in the bacon fat.
Yeah, cook it in the bacon fat, and then throw it all together, a little balsamic vinaigrette.
Don't judge us, Shane.
No, so it's like cabbage.
Oh, cabbage is good.
Yeah, we make a good spicy sausage cabbage soup. That's good.
Apparently, cabbage and Brussels sprouts are like the same thing-ish.
Oh,
that makes sense. They kind of look similar.
Yeah.
And so I made cabbage for Christmas, and that's the same way I cook cabbage, minus the balsamic vinaigrette. And so
that sounds good.
Do that with.
We should do that.
So.
Yeah.
Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
I said yes, just because it's like I'm not turning down any pizza at all. So
that's a good way to live your life. All pizza's good.
Yeah, I gotta agree with that. Like, there's nothing I won't eat on pizza. And pineapple sets everything off.
Yes. Most extreme thing you've ever done?
The what?
Most extreme thing you've ever done?
Skydiving.
Oh God.
Pretty extreme. We went paragliding. That was pretty extreme.
Danielle, if you mute for the dog, I can't hear him talk.
We went diving with sharks in South Africa, and that was pretty extreme.
Y'all are really extreme. I can't. Don't invite me on no trip.
The sharks was actually really cool and super scary.
Any mantra that you live by?
I don't think I have a specific mantra that I live by.
Yeah, I don't think I have one either.
I would have to think.
I mean, like, if the pandemic has showed us anything, it's that, like anything can happen. Right. So
that's a good one. What is one thing you spend too much of your money on?
I got really into fishing. And fishing moors, it turns out, are not cheap. So I've been spending too much money on fishing gear.
Okay.
By Danielle's standard.
Matt would probably, so if we weren't in a pandemic, Matt would probably say like, my love for like wanting to travel and like do things is like where I like to spend
I don't think you
money.
Spend too much money on that.
Okay, well.
I feel like it's a great thing to spend a lot of money on though. See the world, travel.
Yeah.
If you're
I would say Danielle has a tendency she will go shopping. She will find things, but she won't try them on in the store, and she'll try them on at home and then return them because it doesn't fit or whatever. And I think that's a little bit weird. Like it's just creating twice the amount of work for you to do that.
Well, dressing rooms can be interesting places, so I won't fault Danielle for that. If your friends could describe you in one word, what would it be?
Probably goofy for me. I think they'd probably think I'm goofy.
I don't know. That's a hard one. How would they describe me? Caring, loving. I don't know. I don't know if there's one word to really describe me.
Okay.
Whimsical.
Whimsical. That's a word. If you could recommend a book, a movie, podcast, TV series, whatever, what would you recommend?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. By the way, this is our loud dog that was just barking in the background.
Oh, nice. How old is he or she? She or he?
That is Louie. He is a he. Louie for St. Louis.
Same as my brother and his wife's dog, Louie for St. Louis.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Aw. Oh my gosh, I didn't know that. Cool. So a movie, book, you said podcast or?
Any type of media you would recommend, what would it be?
Okay. So I'm gonna go with like podcast. So I have been into two recently. So I really like true crime. So I'm super into Crime Junkie. But then I've also been listening to NPR Throughline, and Matt started listening to it too. So it's kind of the opposite of the true crime stuff, but those are the two podcasts I would recommend.
I'm more of a reader than Danielle, to say the least. So I would recommend, I'm looking at my bookshelf right now. A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn is a great, very interesting read. Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates is fantastic as well. And then I'm a history nerd, like I said, so I've been reading a lot of Eric Larson as well. So stuff by Eric Larson is good, but really any book you can get your hands on is a good book.
I have A People's History. I've never read the whole thing. The book by Ta-Nehisi Coates, Between the World and Me, or really good book. If you like true crime and you want to watch it, I would say check into those miniseries on Netflix. There are some really good ones on there, and HBO has some really good miniseries that are true crime that I watched a while ago. So
which ones? We may have seen them all.
Well, it was a while. It was probably last year, so you probably have seen them all. It was like HBO came out with like 3 in a row that were really good. It was about the soccer coach in like the East Coast. I don't remember what, like he was dating a woman and the kid ended up being killed or something. They framed him. He was black, she was white. That whole situation. Oh. Then there was the girl who told her boyfriend to kill himself through text.
Oh yeah.
One of them. And then there was a third one. And then Netflix, I can't remember that was so long ago. There was some on Netflix that were really good too. But yeah. Your favorite movie?
Favorite movie?
I'm so corny. I love Step Brothers. Step Brothers is like my all-time favorite. It's so dumb, but it's like the one that I could just put on and watch over and over and over and over again.
So just because of the holidays, I have a couple of favorite movies, but just because of the season, I'm going to say National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, just because like that's something that me and my family would just watch every year and just kind of like laugh, and it's so silly and funny. So we've been like watching that for years.
Nice.
It's like super popular right now, but like, yeah.
What's the best vacation you've ever taken?
Probably whenever we went to South Africa. We wrote a teacher's grant and went down to South Africa and went to an area down there and walked around, and then just kind of explored the city. And we had like, it was supposed to be the rainy season. That was like beautiful. The like two and a half weeks that we were there. And it's just like a really special place.
And last question, what is important for people who don't personally know you to know about you?
We're really cool people.
I will say that I feel like I surprise people that despite the way I look, I think my ideology and my beliefs don't necessarily line up with my dad thinks I look like a skinhead, which I don't quite see, but the way, obviously this goes for everyone, but the way people are quick to judge based on the way that I look. Like when I tell people that my favorite music is hip hop, they're like, wait, what? Like it just doesn't quite match up with what they're expecting. So don't judge a book by its cover.
It's very true.
What about you?
I fell in love with Matt because I asked him what was his favorite song, and he played some Outcast, and I was like, oh.
And here we are.
Yep, and here we are. Shane and I go back to Outcast. That's why I had to throw that in there.
Danielle, what is it? What do we need to know about you?
What do you need to know about me? Even though my last name is Hernandez, I'm really bad at Spanish. So going back to that, don't judge a book by its cover. What else to know about me? I am like very just like determined and independent, and sometimes I can come off as bossy, but I'm like not bossy, and just very like set on like what I want to accomplish. And I feel like being a female, sometimes people look at you as like that makes you bossy, or some words I'm not going to say, but that's just not the case. So don't underestimate a strong female.
All right. And I lied. That's not my last question. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we conclude this interview?
I probably am going to like say no and then like walk away and be like, oh man, I should have said that. But no, I think it's just really important that people hear the voices of educators and people that are like educators that are in the classroom really like doing this work. And that it's not easy, and it's not just teaching kids like how to read. Like our job is much more than that, right? So like having to meet the individual needs of each human being is so complex, and it goes beyond curriculum. And we are just juggling so many different roles and really underappreciated. And I hope that this pandemic can start to kind of like change that for educators.
Matt, any last words?
I think the ability to kind of talk through it and hear your questions and answer them is therapeutic for sure, to be able to process. And so I appreciate you letting me hijack this interview or podcast. Danielle was gracious enough to let me do it. So I really appreciate the opportunity to do that.
Well, I want to say thank you both for sitting down with me, Matt, for coming in and not hijacking, but adding a lot of value to this interview, making this a couples interview. Love it. And I want to highlight something Danielle just said, of that you really have to reach the needs of each human being, and each student is a human being, but also each teacher is a human being. And so realizing that everybody that we are asking to teach our students are humans as well. And so I want to thank you all for using your lives and your expertise and your time to kind of like build up our future leaders of America and wherever else these students may go, and somewhat putting your lives at risk to help our future. So I want to say thank you for that. Thank you for sitting down with this interview, and thank you so much.
Thanks, Shane.
Thanks, Shane.